What can we know about the world as it truly is? Is there a reality that exists independently of our minds, or is all knowledge inevitably shaped by the lens through which we perceive it? These questions haunted philosophy long before Kant, but it was Kant who reshaped the landscape by drawing a radical distinction between the world as it appears to us, phenomena, and the world as it is in itself, noumenal. Kant's Copernican revolution in philosophy suggested that the mind is not a passive receiver of reality, it is an active participant in shaping experience. We do not simply mirror the world, we organize it through built-in cognitive structures, space, time, and categories like causality. Objective reality, then, may exist, but we can never access it unfiltered. In an age dominated by relativism, AI, virtual realities, and algorithmic bubbles, Kant's insight feels prophetic. What counts as real when every mind, and now every machine, sees through a different lens? Is objectivity still a meaningful goal or a vanishing ideal? This inquiry is not just epistemological, it is existential. For if our world is always shaped by our framework, then what does it mean to pursue truth? And can we ever claim to know anything beyond our own limited mode of seeing? The limits of knowledge. Kant's epistemological revolution. Before Kant, most philosophers fell into one of two camps: the rationalists, who believed that reason could access metaphysical truths, and the empiricists, who held that knowledge comes only from sensory experience. Kant shattered this binary. In his critique of pure reason, he proposed a radical synthesis. While all knowledge begins with experience, it does not arise from experience alone. The mind plays an active role in shaping what we perceive. Kant's most profound contribution lies in his distinction between the world as it appears to us, the phenomenal realm, and the world as it is in itself, the noumenal realm. We can never access the noumenal directly. We see only its appearance, filtered through our mental structures. The revolution wasn't about skepticism, it was about reorienting philosophy toward the limits and capacities of human understanding. This distinction changed everything. It means that what we take as reality is always mediated. There is no raw perception. Everything we know is already interpreted. The senses provide data, but the mind organizes it into space, time, causality, and more. Kant didn't deny the existence of objective reality. He simply claimed we can never know it as it truly is, only as it appears through our cognitive framework. This was not an invitation to relativism. Rather, it was a call to humility. We may know how the world behaves, but not what it is beyond our experience. Kant's revolution lies in this boundary, between what we can study and what remains forever out of reach. We are not blank slates observing the world. We are participants in its construction. And knowing this, Kant argued, is the beginning of true philosophy. The mind as architect. Why we never see the world as it is, Kant's most disruptive insight, is that the mind is not a mirror, it is an architect. Where previous thinkers believed that perception simply reflected external reality, Kant argued that the mind actively shapes what we experience. In his words, the understanding does not derive its laws from nature, but prescribes them to nature. We never encounter the world as it is. Instead, we encounter the world as it is processed by our mental faculties. Our brains organize incoming sensory data according to built-in templates: space, time, causality, quantity, and other categories of understanding. These aren't learned, they are innate. They are the conditions that make experience possible in the first place. This means that reality, as we perceive it, is always already filtered. The objects we see are not raw things in themselves, but appearances shaped by the mind. We do not see what is out there, we see what our mind allows us to see. Far from being a limit, this structure is what allows coherence. Without the mind's organizing principles, we would face a chaos of impressions, sensory fragments without meaning. The mind's architecture turns noise into experience, turning a stream of data into an intelligible world. This insight forces a re-evaluation of knowledge. Science, perception, and logic all operate within this constructed framework. We can know things as they appear to us, but never as they are independently of our faculties. Reality then is not discovered, it is co-created. Kant's idea may feel unsettling, especially in a culture that prizes objectivity, but it is also empowering. We are not passive observers, we are meaning makers. The mind does not simply receive the world, it builds it. And in understanding that, we begin to understand ourselves. Phenomena and noumena. Two worlds, one experience. Kant draws a crucial line between two realms. Phenomena, the world as we experience it, and noumena, the world as it exists in itself, independent of our perception. This distinction is not a casual metaphor. It is the foundation of his entire critical philosophy. Thus, phenomena are the objects of our knowledge. They are shaped by both sensory input and the mind's organizing structures. The trees we see, the laws of motion we measure, the tables we touch, all belong to the phenomenal realm. They are real, but they are real for us, shaped by the cognitive lens through which we see. Noumena, by contrast, are what exists beyond this lens. They are the things in themselves, untouched by perception. But here is the crux. We can never access them directly. They are not objects of experience, but only of speculation. We must assume they exist, since appearances must arise from something. But what that something is, its nature, its form, its essence, we can never know. This division protects knowledge from both dogmatism and skepticism. It tells the scientist, yes, you can investigate the world, but remember you are only studying how it appears within the human framework. And it tells the metaphysician, no, you cannot reach beyond this framework and claim knowledge of ultimate reality. The tension between phenomena and noumena is uncomfortable. It suggests that everything we know is partial, that behind every truth lies a veil we cannot lift, but it also saves us from illusion. It anchors our understanding within the human condition. For Kant, this is not defeat, it is discipline. Knowledge has limits, and respecting those limits is what makes true knowledge possible. In recognizing the two worlds, we better understand the one we actually live in. Space and time, not out there, but in here. We tend to think of space and time as features of the world, as the stage on which events unfold. But Kant turns this assumption upside down. In his critique of pure reason, he argues that space and time are not external realities we discover, but internal forms of intuition, ways our mind structures all experience. This is not mere wordplay, it is a seismic shift. Kant claims that everything we perceive is already embedded in spatial and temporal frameworks because our mind cannot perceive anything without them. We never experience a thing outside space or a moment outside time because we are wired to process all appearances through these dimensions. Space and time then are not things. They are not containers for objects. They are conditions of how we perceive objects in the first place. Without them, experience would be impossible. They are not drawn from the world, they are projected onto it. This leads to a startling implication. The spatial and temporal structure of reality is not necessarily a feature of the world itself. The noumenal world may not be spatial or temporal at all, but we will never know, because we are bound to the phenomenal mode of seeing. Our entire experience is shaped by a framework we cannot step outside of. Kant's insight anticipates later developments in both psychology and physics. Einstein showed that space and time are relative to the observer. Modern neuroscience confirms that perception is deeply structured by internal templates. In this sense, Kant's idea was not abstract speculation, it was prophetic. To understand space and time as inner forms, not outer realities, is to realize that even our most basic intuitions are conditioned. We do not observe space, we generate it, and with that, objectivity becomes more mysterious than we ever imagined. The categories of understanding, reality as structured thought, Kant's mind-shaping revolution goes further than space and time. Beyond these forms of intuition, he identifies deeper conceptual tools, the categories of understanding, through which we interpret the world. These are not learned ideas, they are a priori structures that the mind uses to process all experience. The categories include unity, plurality, causality, substance, necessity, and more. They are not abstract metaphysical speculations, they are the basic concepts that make coherent thought and perception possible. When we see events, we do not merely see change, we interpret it as cause and effect. When we encounter an object, we categorize it as a substance with properties. These categories do not come from the world, they come from us. According to Kant, these concepts are the mental scaffolding of experience. Without them, perception would be a meaningless blur of sensations. The categories turn perception into cognition. They give structure to the raw data of the senses, much like grammar gives structure to language. This means that the laws of nature, regularities like causality or conservation, are not laws discovered in the world, but patterns our mind imposes on it. Science, then, is not a window into the world in itself, but a systematic exploration of the world as structured by human minds. The implications are profound. We can never ask whether causality exists in the noumenal world. We can only say that causality is a necessary condition for our understanding. It is part of the cognitive lens through which we view reality, not a property of reality untouched by that lens. Kant doesn't destroy objectivity, he reframes it. Objectivity, for him, is what is valid for all human subjects. It is not the world in itself, it is the world as experienced by all of us. In this sense, truth is not about accessing the absolute, it's about understanding the conditions that make thought and reality possible. The unknowable real. Can the noumena ever be touched? Kant draws a strict boundary between the phenomenal world, the realm of appearances, and the numinal world, the thing in itself, independent of perception. The noumenal is not a place or a thing. It is the reality that lies beyond our ability to experience. For Kant, this boundary is absolute. We cannot access the noumenal through reason, perception, or science. It is, in his own words, completely inaccessible to us. But is the noumenal just a placeholder, an empty abstraction? Or is it a necessary concept to make sense of experience at all? Kant's answer is subtle, but the noumenal cannot be known, but it must be presupposed. There must be something that gives rise to appearances, even if that something forever eludes us. The noumenal functions like the edge of a map. It reminds us that the territory extends beyond our knowledge, even if we can never walk there. Without the noumenal, Kant argued, we would risk collapsing into idealism, the idea that reality is only what we perceive. But he resists that view. Appearances are not hallucinations. They are grounded in something real. We simply don't, and can't, know what that real is in itself. This unknowing is not a weakness of Kant's system. It is its moral and epistemological strength. It sets a limit to hubris. It tells science, explore deeply, but know your frame. It tells metaphysics, think boldly, but don't pretend to see the whole. The noumenal is not an object, it is a boundary. And in honoring that boundary, Kant teaches us to live with both precision and humility. We do not need to touch the real to know that it exists. We only need to recognize that not all truth belongs to us. Science and objectivity. Is empirical knowledge still reliable? Kant's philosophy sets limits on knowledge, but it does not undermine science. On the contrary, it clarifies why empirical knowledge is both powerful and confined. Scientific inquiry, for Kant, is the systematic exploration of the phenomenal world, the world as it appears to us through the structures of space, time, and the categories of understanding. Science deals with appearances, not illusions, but phenomena shaped by the human mind. Its laws are not read from nature, but written onto it by the organizing capacities of our cognition. Causality, for instance, is not something we discover in the world in itself. It is a concept the mind applies to every event it perceives. This might sound like relativism, but it's not. Kant insists that because all human minds share the same cognitive framework, science achieves intersubjective objectivity. We all experience the world through the same filters, so the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology are universally valid. for us. But there is a catch. Science cannot tell us anything about the noumenal world. It cannot reach the thing in itself. This doesn't make science false. It makes it contextual. It offers reliable, consistent knowledge about the world as it is experienced, not as it exists independently. In this view, science becomes both more modest and more secure. It cannot explain ultimate reality, but it doesn't need to. It excels within its proper bounds. Kant's framework offers a middle ground between naive realism and total skepticism. It affirms science as a rigorous method while reminding us that even the best maps are not the territory. Empirical knowledge is not the whole truth, but it is true enough within the space of shared human experience. Perception and bias. Kant in the age of digital filters. Kant's insight that perception is not neutral, but actively shaped by the mind, finds new relevance in the age of digital media. Today, our experience of the world is no longer just filtered by innate categories like space and causality. It's also curated by algorithms, social networks, and personalized feeds. Reality is no longer just structured. It is selectively delivered. Kant taught us that we never see the world as it is, but always as it appears to us, structured through cognitive lenses we cannot escape. In the 21st century, those lenses have multiplied. Now digital filters overlay our mental ones. What we see online is determined not just by attention, but by code, engagement metrics, predictive models, confirmation bias. Each person inhabits a subtly different informational world. This raises a modern Kantian question. If our minds already shape perception in the 18th century, what happens when technology begins to shape the mind? Our categories of understanding remain, but they are now mediated by external systems with their own logic, monetary, ideological, or political. Kant warned against mistaking appearances for truth. Today, the warning must be updated. Do not mistake your feed for the world. The digital world amplifies Kant's insight. Our grasp of reality is even more fractured than before, and the illusion of objectivity becomes more dangerous precisely because it feels so personalized. But Kant also offers a path forward. If we are aware of the filters, if we reflect on how we see, we can regain critical agency. We can step back, compare perspectives, and question the architecture of perception. Kant's message endures. We are not passive recipients of reality. We are co-creators. And now more than ever, we must take responsibility for the ways we see. Freedom and morality in a conditioned world. If our experience of the world is shaped by inescapable mental structures, space, time, causality, what room does that leave for freedom? Kant's answer is paradoxical but powerful. Freedom begins where experience ends. It resides not in the phenomenal world, but in the noumenal self. In the Critique of Practical Reason, Kant distinguishes between our empirical selves, subject to laws of nature and causality, and our moral selves, which belong to the realm of reason. Though we cannot know the noumenal self, we must postulate it to make sense of moral responsibility. If we are to be held accountable, we must be free. This is not a metaphysical assertion. It is a moral necessity. Kant calls this the fact of reason. We experience ourselves as morally obligated, as beings who ought to do the right thing. But ought implies can. If we are not free, then morality collapses into determinism. Freedom, for Kant, is not the ability to do whatever we desire. It is the ability to act according to a law we give ourselves through reason, the moral law. To be free is to act not from inclination or impulse, but from duty. It is to transcend the empirical and touch something absolute. This moral law is not derived from experience. It is universal, categorical, and binding on all rational beings. It gives dignity to the human person, not because of what we are empirically, but because of what we are capable of morally. Even in a conditioned world, one where appearances are filtered and knowledge is limited, Kant grounds freedom in reason, and from that freedom flows responsibility, ethics, and hope. We may not control the world we see, but we can choose the principles by which we live. The pursuit of truth. Is objective reality a useful fiction? If Kant is right that we can never know the world as it is in itself, then what becomes of truth? Is it a goal forever out of reach? A noble illusion? Or is objectivity still meaningful, even if incomplete? Kant's answer is subtle. Objective truth, in the strictest sense, may be unknowable. We can never escape our cognitive framework to see things from nowhere. But this doesn't make truth meaningless. Instead, it becomes relational. What is objective is what is valid for all subjects who share our cognitive structure. Truth in this sense is intersubjective. It's what holds across the human experience. The laws of physics, the logic of mathematics, the structures of language, these are not arbitrary. They arise from a shared condition, being human. And that shared framework makes communication, science, and knowledge possible. But Kant also reminds us to remain humble. Our truths are real, but they are not total. They are maps, not territories, models, not metaphysical revelations. The pursuit of truth, then, is not about achieving final certainty. It's about deepening coherence within the limits of reason. In this light, objective reality is not a fiction. It is a regulative ideal. It's a goal we strive toward, not a possession we hold. It disciplines thought, demands rigor, and challenges bias. But it never becomes absolute. This does not diminish truth, it elevates it. It transforms the pursuit of knowledge from domination to dialogue, from conquest to collaboration. Kant's legacy is this: truth matters, not because we can capture the noumenal, but because we can refine our grasp of the phenomenal. Objective reality may lie beyond us, but the pursuit of it sharpens us. And in that pursuit, we become more than knowers, we become thinkers.